J.R.R. Tolkien is the father of modern fantasy and a massive influence on George R.R. Martin and his work. While most chose to express their love for Tolkien by emulating him, Martin chose instead to subvert Tolkien's work, breaking the conventions he helped to create in mainstream fantasy. One of Tolkien's concepts was the idea of the Eucatastrophe, a word he created to express a narrative convention he loved to use. This was the idea that when all hope seemed lost and the protagonists of your story seemed doomed, a Eucatastrophe could occur and suddenly turn everything around in their favor, allowing for good to triumph at the last second. This idea created many tense, satisfying moments in the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit series, such as the climax of the Battle of Hornburg, as well as many other pivotal moments in the series. Now, many people confuse this for a Deus Ex Machina, but this is incorrect. For those who are unaware, a Deus Ex Machina is a phrase that originally meant the day being saved by an act of the gods in Greek theater, but has evolved in modern times to mean a resolution that comes out of nowhere, with no prior foreshadowing. Tolkien's Eucatastrophes, on the other hand, are always internally consistent with his secondary world. That is a very important distinction to make. So, what does this have to do with George R.R. Martin and A Song of Ice and Fire? Well, like I said, Martin subverts many conventions of Tolkien's works in his story. He subverts the idea of the heroic protagonist saving the day in the end by having Ned Stark killed in the first book. Then, when you think the story is about the heroic Starks avenging their fallen father, he subverts it again by completely demolishing House Stark in Book 3. Now, to be clear, Martin is not intentionally trying to contradict expectations just to do it. He's just trying to tell an engaging story that keeps you on your toes, and it works. Which brings me back to the concept of the Eucatastrophe. This is key to both of those major moments I mentioned before, because it's the exact opposite of Tolkien's Eucatastrophe, but not in that it's just a normal catastrophe. In Martin's world, even the people who aren't protagonists and aren't good people get their Eucatastrophes. In the first book, A Game of Thrones, things seem bad for the Lannisters. Ned has their number, he knows their secret, he's gathering all the people he needs to take them down, and it seems everything is set for the Lannisters to be defeated by Ned. Until Littlefinger makes a deal with the Lannisters, betraying Ned and saving their skins at the last moment. In A Storm of Swords, the third book, things once again look bad for House Lannister. Robb is having some trouble, but he's on the cusp of sealing an alliance with the Freys and getting the men he needs to defeat them. But, once again, someone chooses to betray the Starks at the last moment, securing victory for the Lannisters once again. Later in A Storm of Swords, we have the trial by combat between Oberyn Martell and the Mountain. Oberyn has all but won. The Mountain lays on the ground basically dying, but at the last second the Mountain finds his moment and kills Oberyn, sealing Tyrion's fate. This time giving Cersei her Eucatastrophe. This use of the Eucatastrophe follows all the same rules Tolkien created for the word, it's just not for the characters we're actually rooting for, and it's a brilliant way to keep audiences guessing constantly. Sometimes the good guys get their Eucatastrophes in A Song of Ice and Fire, but sometimes the bad guys get them, and you never know who's going to win out in the end, because everyone can have something work out for them, whether they're the good guy or not. It makes it feel real, it makes it feel authentic, and it's also a great way to create some of the most hated villains in the history of literature and television. Can you recall any other subversions of the Eucatastrophe in the books or the series? Leave it in the comments below. It'll be really interesting to see what you guys come up with.